Sports Saturday, hosted by Christian Arcand on Sports Radio WGAM The Game.
Can you believe it?
It's commentary, analysis, and breakdown. A week's worth of sports jam-packed into just 2 fast-paced hours of talk.
That's why I don't read the newspaper.
Whether it's off the green monster, on the parquet, in the net, or on the gridiron, Christian brings all the news to your airwaves.
You got a gift, my friend.
So spend your Saturday afternoon the only way a true sports fan should, with Sports Saturday. And now, your host, Christian Arcand, on Sports Radio, WGAM, The Game.
And a very good afternoon to you. Welcome to Sports Saturday right here on WGAM The Game. I am Chris Arcand, Joe Haggerty in the house as well. Joseph, how you doing today? We have a late start on the show today.
Yes, I'm doing well though.
Yeah?
Nonetheless,
Today's been, this week has been an unbelievable week in sports, in the world. There's obviously we're going to be talking about Penn State just about all day. There's some other sports stories, of course, floating around there right now. All of them, I think, have been overshadowed by what happened in Happy Valley, or what's been happening in Happy Valley for quite a while now. It would seem like we are going to be joined this afternoon, in about 20 minutes actually, by Rocco Russo, who is a booster for Penn State, longtime season ticket holder. And a man who believes that Joe Paterno should not have been fired, which is a stance that I highly disagree with. Joe, I know you kind of went back and forth on this a little bit over the course of the week. Why didn't you think he should be fired at first?
It's not that I didn't think he should be fired. I think some disciplinary action obviously had to be taken. The more I sit around and I think about what happened and what transpired after what happened, I went back and forth, and my final ruling is the firing of Joe Paterno was the right move to make. You had to make that move. He withheld information. The part that I don't agree with is the Penn State trustees have kept McQueary on, the eyewitness to the incident in 2002 in the shower. They kept him on, and they shouldn't have done that. He should be fired. I think ultimately he will probably be fired.
He wasn't at the game today.
He wasn't at the game. He's on leave now. I think they're moving in that direction, but I think it should have been quick and hard. Joe Paterno, you're fired. McQueary, you're also fired. You didn't go to the authorities. I think there's something bigger at play here than just, we didn't go to the authorities. There's a whole lot going on, and there's so much to cover on it. It's so hard to sort it all out, really.
883-9900 is the number, 603-883-9900. We are going to have Mr. Russo on in about 15 minutes or so, so if you want to make your calls, you're going to have to do it early, you're going to have to do it later. Howard Bryant from ESPN will also be on the program later on in the show. Very much looking forward to that one as well. We might, it's this whole story, and it's funny you were talking about McQueary. We were just talking about this off the air, actually. McQueary, through all of this, I don't find to be as culpable or as guilty as I do Joe Paterno. And here's why. Whenever anybody talks about McQueary and about him walking into what he walked into, and I'm not going to say it on the air, obviously, if people have read this report, this grand jury report, it's 23 pages. It's the most horrifying thing I've ever read in my life. I had to go back and read it because there's certain points of it that I think refute arguments made by supporters of Penn State who seem to be, I don't want to say burying their head in the sands, but seem to be in some sort of weird denial that I can't really explain. Mr. Russo will come on and explain it to us later. It's a culture that you don't really get if you're not there. And I think a lot of people aren't taking that into account. Whether you should or not is another story, but we'll at least have him on to sort of bring that side of the story out. Back to McQueary. He never asked for any of this. Yeah. Okay? McQueary never asked for any of this to happen. He was minding his own business. He heard something. He walked in, and I know what everyone says when they hear this. They say, if that was me, I would have walked in there. I would have knocked his head off.
Yeah.
And you know what? Maybe you would have. Not everybody's prone to violence. Not everybody's a violent person. If I walked in there, I'm a pretty hot-headed guy. If I walked in there, I probably would have puked.
Yeah.
I probably would have vomited all over the place and not known what to do. And the people acting like, McQueary's he's a wuss because he didn't do anything. I mean, there's people in the Army get shell-shocked, and they're professional, they're trained soldiers here. There's nothing wuss-like about freezing up sometimes. And I think that's what happened to him. And I'll even give him the benefit of the doubt of leaving and calling his dad. There is nothing wrong with calling your dad and saying, Dad, something horrible just happened. I don't know what to do.
Right.
There is nothing wrong with that at all, I think. I mean, everybody's dad's different, I guess. And what's interesting is McQuarrie's dad played for Sandusky and Paterno, too.
Right.
Which is, I mean, that's just the way it is down there.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. Anyway, so he called his dad. His dad said, talk to Paterno. So he did. And from that point on, I say up until that point, I think he did the right thing.
Right.
Based on his reaction to it, which you can't always predict. You know, I'd like to think that if it was me, I would have stopped it. However, it did say in the report that both the boy and Sandusky saw him. So I assume if they saw him, it stopped right then.
Right.
He could have done more, obviously, to stop it, but whatever. I assume it stopped. What he didn't do when he realized that, okay, Sandusky's still around.
Right.
He still has an office here. He still has kids free reign to walk in and out of any building on Penn State. He's free to walk into closed Penn State practices where McQuarrie's coaching. Mm-hmm. He had to see this guy walking around. And rather than say, hey, listen, I saw something. I saw this guy doing something, and I can't work with him.
Right.
And either I'm leaving or he's leaving. And he didn't. He stayed on. He went from, a graduate assistant to the wide receivers coach.
Right.
You think you just move up in life like that just because?
Yeah.
I mean, he got treatment for that because he didn't say anything. And I think to deny that is silly.
Right.
So up until that point, I don't blame McQuarrie. But after that, you have to.
Right.
You have to. There's no other way around it. And it's too bad because at the end of the day, he didn't really, none of this had anything to do with him. And you could say the same for Paterno. Paterno didn't do anything.
Yeah.
But listen, he testified to the grand jury in that report, which, my God, is terrible to read. But in that report, right after the description of what happened in that shower and what McQuarrie did about calling his father and then talking to Paterno, it says right there in black and white, Joseph V. Paterno testified to the grand jury that a graduate assistant came to his house on a Saturday afternoon or whatever it was and was very upset and said that he had seen Sandusky in the shower either molesting or doing something of a sexual nature to a boy that he estimated to be about 10 years old. Paterno said that to a grand jury. It was a testimony under oath. I don't think Paterno's a liar. I don't think he's going to go lie under oath and lie and say that this happened when it didn't. And people are still, we don't know what Paterno knew. No, we know what Paterno knew.
Right.
And I'm willing to bet he knew a lot more than that. There was an investigation in 1998. And that was, you telling me Paterno didn't know that his defensive coordinator was getting investigated in 1998 for this?
Right.
I mean, is anybody really supposed to believe that? That's absurd.
No, it is absurd.
It's unbelievable. And you see kids out there rioting in the streets in Happy Valley, and it's really like another planet.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to say it. I don't know what else to say. I think Joe Paterno knew about all of it, and he kept Sandusky around. He let him walk in and out of practice.
Yep.
Had an office right down the hall in that same building. That's Paterno's building. Paterno just said the athletic director doesn't decide who's in that building. Joe Paterno decides. I've had several people well connected with Penn State tell me that if Joe Paterno said jump, the athletic director says how high.
Right.
And that's how it's been. Curley's only been the athletic director there since 1993. Joe Paterno's been there 60 years. I mean, just think about it.
Yep.
That's not exactly a, crazy. I know there's a hierarchy in most places. It's the athletic director, but not at Penn State.
No.
Penn State is Paterno, and there's everybody else.
Joe Paterno's an icon.
You've met Joe Paterno, haven't you?
I didn't meet him. We had a brief exchange in 2008 when Temple was playing Penn State. I was standing outside the stadium waiting to see Joe Paterno because he is an icon in, sports, let alone college football. And I waited outside just to see him in person. And as he walked by me, he asked me how I was doing, and I said I was doing good. And I asked him how he was doing in return, and he said, "Can't complain." And that was the end of the interaction. It wasn't really a meeting. I didn't have a sit-down meeting in his office with him or anything, but I have talked to him. I exchanged words with him, I guess I could say. But he's an icon in college football and sports alone. He's being a head football coach with one program for 40 years is unheard of.
Yeah.
There's not that many people that can say, "Oh, I've done that."
And as a football coach, his track record is exemplary.
Right.
And denying that, I'm not denying that whatsoever. He graduated 84% of his players.
Yep.
He conducted himself in a classy way. He was never, sort of towards the end there was a couple of incidents, I think, when they tried to get him to resign, and he said no, and he made some weird comments about one of his students or one of his players was accused of harassment or something to some woman, and he made some weird comment about it. I'm not sure he really understood what was happening. That's another thing. The guy is 84.
Yeah.
You have to wonder how much of this he's really processing. I hate to say it. Yeah, how much of all of this is really going through his head?
Right.
It's hard to say.
Which is still no excuse.
Absolutely no
right.
excuse.
Yeah.
And the fact that he graduated 84% of his players is no excuse either.
Yeah.
None of it's any excuse. All I'm saying is that up until this, I was never aware or knew of any huge wrongdoings on the part of Joe Paterno. I just never did. He was always revered by everybody.
Right.
Everybody loves Joe. And the fact that he knew about this and testified to a grand jury that I had McQueary come in, he told me what happened, and I went to the athletic director, and that was it. And I didn't do anything else. And let Sandusky stay around.
Yep.
Even though he wasn't technically an employee at the time because he got fired in 1999 after the first round of accusations popped up in 98.
Did he get fired or did he resign?
He retired.
Oh, okay.
Is technically what happened.
Okay.
But connect the dots here.
Yeah.
I don't,
It was all
why would a
connected.
55-year-old guy who was at Penn State and
in
probably
line.
next in line
Right.
just retire at 55?
Yeah.
Not
That makes
doesn't
no
doesn't
sense.
pass the smell test. I don't think. Of course, you can't prove any of this unless you were in the room.
Right.
But it's not really that much of a stretch. Because of that, because Paterno knew that, and because he was aware of what was going on, I think he should go to jail. I think he should be arrested. I think Joe Paterno should be arrested. I don't think he should be in jail for a very long time. I realize, he's an old guy.
Yeah.
And I don't really even think that he was what he did. I think what he did at the heart of it was try to stick up for his friend and try to protect his friend. And there's something noble about trying to do that. But when you are covering up something so heinous, so horrible, so unforgivable, so just vicious and predatory and just disgusting,
Right.
you got to make an example, even of an old guy like that. I'm sorry. That's my opinion, and I think he should be arrested. And I understand if you don't agree with me. I'm not saying everybody has to. I certainly would understand people saying I don't think he should be arrested. Fine, I do.
Right.
I think he should go to jail, not for life or anything, but certainly for some time.
Yeah.
This was a crime, an absolute crime. Sandusky was the main culprit, obviously, but he could have stopped this. And the fact that he didn't, I think, is worthy of a short sentence.
Yeah.
And I'm saying it on the radio, so I can't take it back now. 883-9900, 603-883-9900. We're going to be joined, as I said earlier, we're going to be joined very shortly by Rocco Russo, who is a big-time booster for Penn State. Long-time season ticket, can tell you everything you need to know about Penn State. And they lost today, by the way, in case anyone noticed.
17-14.
17-14 to the Nebraska Cornhuskers in what was they were getting shut out in the first half. I know that.
Yeah.
So they came back and, sort of a fitting end to the week for Penn State. It's been surreal. It really has been. And I was thinking about it earlier, and aside from maybe the Munich Olympics, this is the worst sports-related story ever.
Yeah.
I'd say. And I know there's a lot of very bad things that have happened. OJ, I guess you could say, was sort of a sports story. It was covered on sports networks,
Right.
it was involving an athlete. It's not really a sports story. This isn't really a sports story either, if you think about it.
It's not a sports story at all.
It's just a story with the sports people
Backdrop.
related to it. Yeah. But it's, as far as I'm concerned, without a doubt, the worst, most horrible sports-related story ever. And I hope there's never one worse. I can't imagine what could be worse than this. Okay. This is just so sickening, so horrible, so over-the-top surreal and atrocious that you can't really put into words exactly how to react to it Which is why I part of the reason why I don't want to say give McQuarrie a pass here, but don't blame him the way I blame everybody else. He was the young guy. He was just trying to make a name for himself at Penn State in the football program. That's nothing unusual. A lot of people would try and do that. You see a superior in there. You see a guy who you had to, look up to. I know he wasn't working there at the time, but everybody knew who Sandusky was.
Yeah.
You see him in there doing that. How are you? I could not tell you that I know how to react because I never considered walking in on that. I've never thought about that. Now we all have. That's the thing. That's what's really screwed up about this is, in a way, anyone who read that grand jury report now had to stop and think about what would I do if that was me in that shower, which is a scenario I hope I never, ever, ever, ever in my life have to do anything close to or have to confront anything close to that. But now we've all thought about it, and that's pretty messed up.
Yeah.
But that's the way it is. Let's get Rocco on the line here before we go into our break. We got or you want to call him at 5? Let's do it at the 5 o'clock. Okay. We'll do him at 5, and then we'll have Howard Bryant on at 5:25. It'll just be easier to get back on track that way.
Okay.
Do we have a call earlier? What was it?
It was just a comment that they didn't want to go on the air. So.
Oh, what was the comment?
I'd prefer not to say it. It's they wanted to ask a question a question asked for Rocco Russo when he comes on. So.
Oh, okay.
So we'll wait until that.
Well, it's all right. I mean, that's if anyone else has a question they want to ask Mr. Russo, if you call us and tell us what it is, we'll try and ask it to him. I gotta say, I have no ill will towards this guy. He's a friend actually, and someone who I think is he's not a bad person. I don't think these people down at Penn State are necessarily bad people. I think they're swept up in a culture that people outside of Penn State aren't really familiar with and don't really get. And I'm not saying that's an excuse for going out there and rioting in defense of a guy who looked the other way while his defensive coordinator was raping children.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's touchy, and I don't want to. Everybody's sort of been tiptoeing around everything here, and it's just been such an unbelievable series of events. And now with these new allegations that are coming out, that rumor from about how the outreach program that Sandusky was getting the kids from might have been like some really, really underground, like he was pimping the kids out.
Yeah.
To like the.
Ugh.
I mean, you think about it. Whenever you think you can't get more, and that might not be true, and God hope it isn't. But I mean, there's 2 guys working on it, and they're talking about it down there now.
Right.
It's really something else. I don't know exactly what, because we both went to schools with pretty big football programs.
Yeah.
Temple's football program's no joke. University of Colorado is a big-time state school like Penn State, and it's, there's a big following for the football team.
Yeah.
Nothing like this would fly down there.
Yeah.
There wouldn't be. In Boulder they'll riot when their toast comes out burnt. You know what I mean? But right. I don't think they would have rioted to support a coach who did something like that. Even someone with a tenure like Paterno.
Right.
It's really, really ingrained down there, like more than you can really imagine.
And the common misconception I think is that it's isolated to Central Pennsylvania. I went to school in Pennsylvania. I went to Temple University, as I think I've made pretty clear in my flashes.
Wait. You went to Temple University?
Yeah.
Get out of here.
T for Temple U. Anyway, not to make light of the situation, but it's ingrained in Pennsylvania. There's Penn State campuses all throughout Pennsylvania. And, when I worked for the football team, and I went to a lot of football games when I was at Temple, and the only time I ever saw the stadium full was when Penn State came to town. And it wasn't like there was a lot of Temple fans there. There was a section of Temple fans in Lincoln Financial Field where the Philadelphia Eagles play, which is also where Temple plays their home games. And the rest was just a whiteout. It was everybody was there to support Penn State. And so it's, it's not just a central Pennsylvania thing. It is a statewide, from Harrisburg all the way to Philadelphia and
Southern New Jersey.
Yeah. Penn State is a big deal in that area. And I don't know. It makes me really upset to even think about it because, as I've said before, I have a young son, and if anything like this ever happened to him, and I'm getting emotional now just thinking about it, I would go absolutely – I would stop at nothing to make sure that the people who were responsible top to bottom, even witnesses that didn't do anything, I would do everything in my power to make sure they came to justice through the law. I wouldn't go nuts and go on a shooting spree or anything like that.
Wouldn't go all Delonte West on him.
No, I wouldn't go Delonte West or anything like that. I would make sure that the law was served and justice was served. And the fact that this went on and nothing was done until now is unbelievable to me.
Yeah, that's really the best way to describe this entire week. It's been just unbelievable. This story broke right after we got off the air last week.
Yeah.
Like, literally. I'm almost glad. You know what? I'm glad it didn't break while we were on the air. As nice as it would have been to like been right at the beginning of the story, processing all this and then trying to speak about it would have been ridiculous.
Yeah.
It would have been impossible.
We've had a week to think about it. And
we've had a week to think about it. And look, and we still, maybe it's just because we're not that good, but I mean, look at it. We're still here like struggling. I've been thinking about this all week long. I've been writing down what I want to say, and it's impossible really to make make any sense of it.
Yeah, to put it into words.
It's impossible to make sense of this. And it's never the only thing that's going to happen is more details are going to come out that are going to make this worse. Which is, it's like, just think about that.
Yeah.
This story will get worse.
Yeah.
It's just the worst story of all time, and it's going to get worse. That's terrifying. It really is. There's nothing that'll come of it that'll make it any better. You know what I mean? It's just 883-9900, 603-883-9900 if you would like to get a call in before the break. We're going to be breaking at the top of the hour. And then at 5 o'clock, we are going to have Mr. Russo on from Penn State. He's a booster, season ticket holder, pretty much a walking Penn State encyclopedia. I'm sure he's upset about this game. I'm sure he's upset about this whole week, really. Although I'll say this. He told me before this interview and said it was okay for me to say this when I came on, that he didn't think that Paterno should have been fired. He said that Paterno should have been allowed to play out the rest of the season. And that, you know, I'm sure I'll say it when he comes on, he really stressed the fact that Penn State's like a family.
Yeah.
And, you know, something happens to a family member. And in a way, in a weird sort of way, I kind of got what he meant. But I'm not going to speak for him. He'll be on very shortly. If you have a question or if there's a comment you'd like to say to him, you'd like to say it on the air here, you can give a call at 883-9900, 603-883-9900. You will not be able to call while Mr. Russo is on the phone. So anybody thinking, I finally get my chance to get a shot at some Penn State guy, it's not like that. I'm not bringing him on to ambush him and say, oh, hey, gotcha, or anything like that.
Right.
That's not my goal with this at all. What I'm trying to do here and what I think is going to be useful for us in furthering this dialogue about what happened down in Happy Valley this week is what I hope to do here is to just shine a little bit of a light onto Happy Valley and what it is and what it's like down there. Because if you're not from there and you've never been there, you're not going to get it.
No.
It's not going to make sense, and you're going to rush to judgments that we've all done that aren't necessarily staked in the reality of what that place is like. Again, I'm not saying that excuses anything at all. I'm just saying it's going to open up their perspective a little bit, and it is. I mean, there's no doubt about it. People who aren't from there don't get that.
Yeah.
They don't get Penn State, you know, and they didn't get it before this happened, and they're not getting it now. And there's not much to get. Now, let me say, it's fanatical. It's a group of people who live in a region that are fanatical about a college football team. I'm not saying it's like rocket science here, that anyone's splitting the atom.
Right.
Okay, this isn't super complicated. But the level of the fanaticism and the overall sort of cult of personality around Paterno and around the Nittany Lions is certainly something that more people think they get than actually do.
Right.
Than people who grew up with it, who have been, you know, sort of enshrouded in it their whole life, including many of those kids. And that's one thing that I can't understand. You know, if Penn State says really, hey, we're going to rally around our guys, and you know what? Yes, good for ESPN because they showed that on Penn State, and this is another thing. On Penn State campus, they had a candlelight vigil for the victims. And it was attended by thousands of people, much more than the amount of students who were rioting.
Right.
And you have to remember also that Penn State's huge.
Yeah.
It's 35,000 kids, and there was, 3,000 rioting? That's like 6%.
Yeah.
Okay? There were a lot of kids out there that weren't rioting. There were some that were, and usually it's the real cream of the crop that gets out and riots anyway in the first place, let's be honest here. You know, usually the people who are the loudest are the dumbest, and I think we're both living proof of that.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? It's not like the entire campus was in an uproar and every single student was out there on the picket line saying, hey, Paterno shouldn't have been fired.
Paterno around, yeah.
There's 32,000 kids who either agreed or who didn't disagree enough to go out there and flip a news van over, okay? So let's kind of calm down on all this. Those Penn State people should be dragged out in the street and, you know, whatever. It's some of them, yeah, maybe some of those people rioting should. Then again, these are college kids, okay? I was not exactly super. I went to the University of Colorado too, by the way, but it's not like I was, you know, the suave decision maker who never got worked up about anything when I was in college, or that I'm not that still now or anything. You know what I mean? It's a different time in people's lives, so I'm not going to sit here and judge everybody that was out there. What I am going to say is that there should have been much more coverage of this vigil dedicated to the victims than there was, and that's a little upsetting. There should have been more. They should have done something more than that. And I'm a little upset that they didn't. I think that the sexy story here, that's a terrible way to say it, and I apologize, but the story here is the kids out flipping stuff over, and let's all get mad at Penn State again. And the fact that they had this other vigil that was, I think, tripled in attendance, dedicated to the victims, and it was just sort of a quick blurb on SportsCenter. That's the only place I saw it. I didn't see it on CNN. I didn't see it on anywhere else, really. And they may have covered it. I might have missed it. But, I mean, they were showing that riot footage all day, every day after it happened. I mean, it was not – there was no doubt what they were trying to get at. And that's a little upsetting to me, I think. Anyways, we're just about to do our top-of-the-hour break here. When we return, we will have Rocco Russo on the air with us. He will be speaking on behalf of Penn State and Happy Valley sort of as a whole here. So, it's going to be interesting. I'll say that. Mr. Russo, I know, is a great guy and a big-time football fan. He knows his stuff. I would have loved to have had the guy on to just talk football with him, but that's not the way this week went, as we all know. And we're gonna try and get a dialogue going here. I'm looking forward to it. Howard Bryant will also be on with us in the next hour as well. And what happened to my old outro music? This is the old one.
Yeah.
I put new outro music in here. I must not have gotten programmed. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. When we come back to the top of the hour, Rocco Russo will be on the air. If you have a call, you would like to a question or a comment, you'd like to call in, the number is 883-9900, 603-883-9900. We are always looking to hear what you have to say out there in Manchester or Nashua, wherever you are, and we will be doing that when we come back. I'm Chris Arcand. He's Joe Haggerty. We'll see you the next hour with Rocco Russo from Penn State.